All right. Yes, I knew this would happen. The video will start to lag on my end. Always a treat. That's how I know I'm streaming something successfully. Well, we're here today. Hi, this is me, Robbie Burns, and I am doing my doing a little live with some members of the Music at Tech Talk Discord community. And there's a lot of exciting iPad notation news that has come out in the last couple weeks, and we're just hanging out chatting about it. So I don't have a ton of structure. I figured we could maybe just talk about some of the apps that were on iPad that could compose prior to last week, and then some of the newer ones, and then see where we go. Does everyone want to say hi, introduce themselves? Who's here? We might have some more join in soon too.
I'm Paul Shimmons from Michigan, band teacher.
I'm Ayler. I'm out in Iowa, 512 band.
Nice. And yeah, I think we were going to start with talking about Notion, which we were talking about before I hit the stream button. Paul, I know you've used this. You're like a Notion wizard. We were just talking about the thing that immediately, and see, the thing is like immediately when I started to launch the app, the very first thing I see, and I might have to just do an actual screen share because this is I got a little bit of glare from a light here, but more or less this is the screen we were talking about. It's the when you open an app and you get taken basically to a view that's kind of like the Apple Files app. So in the same way that the Apple Files app kind of just shows you like this left sidebar here of all of your locations and then all of your files, well, Notion is functions with that and shows you some of your more recent files, but it's the same interface. And we were kind of talking about how this is the sort of like the equivalent of opening an, going to the open menu or like the save menu of a desktop app and sort of being taken to the Finder or File Explorer interface. And how I like this, we're not all in agreement on how much we like this or the way that it's implemented. But I'll just say that you can see here, Paul, that not only are you correct that it does work this way, but I have like nothing in my recents area for Notions. There's like an audio file and an XML file that are not really related to Notion. That I think it's able to open those files, so it shows those in my recents. But I don't know. That's that. What should I do? What do you have to say about Notion? What is the state of Notion?
Well, I'm really surprised that you haven't used it a whole lot. But Notion has been my choice of notation app for the last, I don't know, four years or something, because I updated my MacBook and I lost access to Sibelius. And so I was looking for an app that worked on both iPad and on desktop. So PreSonus, we were talking about this too. We're talking about the notation app, Notion, which is from PreSonus. And so I've been using on my iPad the notation app, Notion, and on my desktop. And one of the things I appreciate is even though Notion uses iOS interface that you showed a minute ago, with when you open it and you're interacting with your files, I appreciate the way that Notion integrates iCloud, because I can be working on a file on my iPad and move over to my desktop, and without even thinking about it, it's really easy for me to find that same file. I don't end up with duplicates all over the place. And it's just there. I think PreSonus and Notion have had this integration figured out better than most people have, and they've had it figured out for a while. It's pretty seamless.
I'm trying to share.
I've had my issues with Notion too. Yeah, I see you're trying to start that up. You're trying to share your iPad screen.
I have no idea what you can see right now or what you cannot see right now.
It says that you
All right.
May or may not work.
Yeah, we'll find out. I've got a lot of wires crossed. Anyway,
go on. Notion isn't. Yeah, no, not like the end all, but it has sufficed to get a rating and compose done. The printout is what I've been most frustrated with on Notion. Playback is okay on Notion. And on desktop, I've used Notion for some like my musicals. We don't have orchestra here, so I'll fill in the string parts with Notion on desktop because then it has that end tap feature, which iPad does not. So
Okay, I opted to just airstream
Grant
it.
County Rhythms.
Yeah, so this is
there
probably
you go.
at some point something where I needed a couple of measures to appear on a staff for a keynote slide, and so I thought I would compose it. This was the tool that I had available to me. I haven't done this piece for... You done this tune, this band chart before? Grant County Celebration?
I
probably just needed some rhythms, and then I made my little thing, copied it into a keynote slide, and then as you can see here, I've got some wackiness going on because what I probably started doing was just experimenting with the Apple Pencil integration at some point.
Right, and that's one of the things we can talk about, right? Is whether or not these apps support handwriting and whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've been using it, to a pretty, I mean, this uses, you've used Symphony Pro as well, right? Are you pretty familiar with that one?
I have it, but I don't do a whole lot with it because, again, I just stuck with Notion, and Symphony Pro has worked. It doesn't crash on me anymore like it did when it very first came out, the very first time. But Symphony Pro has matured very nicely. And Symphony Pro and Notion, before StaffPad came out, were the ones that supported handwriting. And
Right.
handwriting works pretty well.
And they use
both.
They sort of like outsource their engine, right?
They did.
Now, remind me how to.
Yeah, what is that called?
This. Can you remind me how to even get the pencil to input?
You have to go down to the bottom of the screen, to the little keyboard icon,
right,
and tap on the pencil.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Is that supposed to work? I thought that was supposed to work. Oh.
Well, that's interesting.
I got rid of more than I wanted to. Either that or it's a bug.
Yeah, I don't remember if you're supposed to be able to scribble things out or not.
All right.
I know you can just write notes in there.
Let's just we'll create a new one. All right.
I've been using StaffPad for all my handwriting stuff recently, so
tell me about that a little bit. I mean, are you kidding me, Zoom? Okay, awesome. Well, we're gonna have issues in a moment here. I might have to have you all re-enter because I guess Zoom is not currently, whatever my current status with Zoom is not like authenticated. I might have to log in or log out or something. Whatever. It's telling me I'm about to run out into that 40-minute limit, which I shouldn't be about to. That shouldn't happen. But whatever. We'll find out. Yeah. So I mean, so you were using this for a while. I mean, and I'll be honest, I haven't used this in a while. But I mean, I've been doing some time trials between some of these different apps lately just to kind of see what happens. I mean, for like really easy basic stuff where you can get this to work, it is definitely quite fast. I'm sorry, you were saying
and that's one of the things I like doing is in class, I'll use music or I'll use the handwriting a lot because it makes it so I don't have to go digging for tools and try to remember, okay, where do I find quarter notes? How do I get quarter notes entered? Where's the keyboard? How do I get it to be an A or whatever? I can just write it on the staff, and it's a whole lot faster when I've got a class of 50 middle schoolers with instruments in their hands. And then when we're just doing short demonstrations.
Okay, cool. I'm noticing your message as well about rebooting the stream. I think what's going to happen is let's go ahead and let it run. It's gonna in about a minute or two. I'll reboot it, the Zoom call that is. I'll stay on the line on the live, and then I'll have screen sharing is just a click away to enable. I mean, so what do you think, Paul? As someone who's probably got the most Notion experience, definitely of anyone here, you've got Symphony Pro experience. I mean, like, so is this the primary input method you were using? I know you do a lot of like MIDI input as well and you do some stuff with Notion for your school musical. Is this still offering you features that are unique to those needs? That like, does it still find a place in that workflow? What do you think?
Well, my primary input right now, honestly, is sorry about the phone call. My primary note input right now for a lot of my stuff is I snap a picture of it in one of the optical character recognition apps and then import it into Notion or StaffPad or now Oracle or whatever as an XML file and then edit things. So no, I don't think handwriting is the fastest way to get things
Are
in
you
there. If I'm
primarily
doing a
working off
profile.
of an iPad right now?
I'm going back and forth between the two. It depends. If I'm at home, I've got a 32-inch monitor, so I like to throw things up there on my desktop. But I want that to go back and forth easily.
Do you have a Mac that either travels with you or at work?
I do, yeah. My MacBook Pro travels with me along with my iPad. But when I'm on my podium, obviously, I don't want to be grabbing my MacBook.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, you mentioned StaffPad, so I guess let's go there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this is an example of. Oh, actually, we were talking a minute ago about like what are the features of the iPad that make the iPad. And actually, I'm wondering because I haven't ever tried it. Can you do split view in Notion? Yeah, it looks like you can. So you can have one app open on half the screen and then Notion on the other. Okay. So StaffPad you mentioned which is only for handwritten. Oh, no one could see any of the split viewing I was just doing. Let me model that again. Yeah, so Notion, another app, split view, yay, split view. I like split view. The reason I like it is because a lot of the time I'm referencing something, I'll open it up on Fourscore on the left side of the screen. Maybe I'm trying to write something and I'll just get in there and, zoom in really close on both and then just kind of copy and paste. And that'll be my strategy. So
I do that all the time for editing parts after I've snapped a picture of it. There's always something that has to be fixed.
sure.
So I'll have it in split screen like that and just shoot through things real quick.
All right, so StaffPad you were mentioning, and similarly, like, yeah, these open in split view, but StaffPad does have its own library kind of system. But StaffPad is hard to kind of compare to these other ones for a couple of reasons. Like, it really is, I feel like they're trying to do something very, very different. It's a very iPad first experience. It's an iPad only experience, of course, unless you're on Windows. And I feel like they're kind of focusing on what are unique ways to input notes and then what are unique ways to output notes. And they definitely have like this really rich sort of in-app purchase system of like high quality samples, probably amongst the highest quality you're going to get on the iPad, but like really deeply integrated into their app and experience. Like, to my knowledge, you can't get any of those samples to work in any other program. Is that your experience as well?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Scoring Notes had something on. Doesn't StaffPad have some new kind of audio recognition engine too? Like, they can like transcribe the music from samples that you play into it without a MIDI connection at all, just through the mic.
Yeah, they were actually on. There was like a clip from WWDC, Apple's developer conference this past spring. Yeah, mentioning that feature. I'm not prepared to say anything about that. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that's like, to me, it's like, they're all like really frictionless ways to get notes in that are sort of unique to the app, but they definitely are also ways of getting notes in where, like, if you don't really have a whole lot of control over it, taking it in wrong. So like, if a handwriting stroke or a note that you play from the outside world doesn't get interpreted correctly, there's, not as much control. I mean, you can certainly like drag the notes up and down the staff if they're on the wrong pitch, but fixing things like rhythms and rests, those are things that, that are, there isn't as much control. I think that it's beautiful though. I mean, I think honestly, like one of my favorite designed pro music apps on the iPad. I just think it's got the right amount of stuff on screen for my needs anyway. I'm not a professional composer, so I like kind of how there's like this minimal look to it, but you can still get to everything with a long press or a pencil tap or a toolbar.
To answer your question, Robbie, about the sounds, you are correct. The sounds that are in StaffPad are only accessible by StaffPad, so you can't use it for any other app. Which is, it'd be nice if you could, and that maybe coming down the road. I like the fact that Dorico is now supporting audio units, and so maybe some of these companies will have a little more incentive to put out a sound library like StaffPad has in it. We'll see. Yeah, and the audio transcribing feature might be cool if it works, but that's one of the reasons that it's not out yet, is because I don't think it's working yet. It's going to be able to work, but it's not out and not available to the public at all. The problems with StaffPad, you mentioned. Yeah, you mentioned already, Robbie, one of the problems with StaffPad, right, is if it doesn't recognize your handwriting, you're out of luck. I mean, that's the only way to get anything into StaffPad. There's no typing a note in. There's no using a MIDI keyboard. You have to handwrite it.
I'm super curious. My gut, and I don't have any information on this, my gut is that this is kind of the direction they want to continue to go in, is being this sort of like stylus first kind of method for touch. But I really, it would be super interesting to me if there was even like the most basic of MIDI and computer keyboard input, because it would really, I think I would use it a lot if there was just some like super basic stuff, as easy as like select a note value, tap a note on your computer keyboard. That would go a long way for me.
Well, and I think there's, with any app that we use, there's a getting to learn it, period. And I think you really have to understand how StaffPad wants you to write things. You can't just willy-nilly notate with your scrawls and hope that it works. StaffPad is looking for some very specific inputs. And Dave.
All right, gonna reboot that stream. I lost them, but they'll be right back. Oh, always fun when that happens. All right, any second now. While we're waiting for that to come back, I'll just continue to model my attempts at getting some notes into StaffPad. I was showing earlier what it's like. What it's like to input something with like some quarter notes and some eighth notes and some half notes, and I'm going to try to model some triplets on screen while we continue this discussion.
To go in.
Okay, yeah, my bad.
Sort of stylus
That's. I assume we will probably not go longer than 45 minutes, so I didn't fix the problem. I just went ahead and rebooted.
Sure.
Oh, and there's Paul. Cool.
Now, two things to point out. One, for anyone watching it who saw what you did with Split View a second ago, if they're thinking that looks different than their iPad, you're on the 15 beta, which has changed how Split View works for the better.
Yeah, it definitely has improved some things. I don't know that I showed what it improved, or did I?
I mean, the speed and fluidity at which it happened is part of that.
I think I'm just fast. I mean, this is
it wasn't as fast on 14. Yeah.
Yeah, you mean
Because you would have had to wait for it to kind of draw that second area. The other thing is, I guess, a question in StaffPad right now. Do you have the galley view, or I guess what Sibelius would have called panorama view, instead of like the page view open right now?
yes, I do.
Okay, yeah. So I will withhold any judgments about the note spacing.
Yeah, this is just
Because
Well, I think in StatPad, that's the only view that's available, isn't it? Is just the continuous.
I don't believe I have ever used another view, so that might be possible.
Okay, so does it have any kind of page layout features then, like system breaks and?
Nope.
Nope.
Oh.
That's one of the problems with StatPad, right? Notion's a little bit better, but StatPad, you kind of get whatever you want or whatever it wants you to have. There's very minimal page layout because that's not one of his focuses. He doesn't even want to print his music, honestly. He wants everyone to have the StatPad reader on their own iPad and then to push that stuff out.
Sure. I think one big point, and this is the main reason I've never picked up StaffPad, is just where the iPad notation fits in somebody's workflow. Is it there as demonstration? Is it there as the iPad, the final destination? Are you using something like Music to, or like the Fourscore Sync thing to like have everybody on an iPad in a rehearsal? And I don't know any K-12 schools that are doing anything like that. Or is the iPad part of a workflow towards having something printed out? Or is it something that's neither? Is it there as for demonstration purposes of music notation?
Yeah, I mean, I have.
Yeah,
go ahead.
When we talk about K-12, I think a lot of us are in the same boat. We're rewriting parts, we're rearranging things. So most of us are going to end up are printing this stuff. So it's a pretty needed feature.
Yeah. At this point, my work is about 50-50 in terms of what I'm doing with notation software. About half of it is rearranging parts or arranging new stuff for students, but about half of it at this point is making new resources from scratch, whether those are scale sheets or something more involved as a reference or a thing for kids to fill out or something. And those, I kind of draw a line there, and they both require printing it as the final step, but I think the latter involves a lot more creativity and a lot more pushing, not creativity in like a compositional sense, but in terms of how you're laying out the page, a lot more futzing with more complicated features of the software.
Now, one of the nice things about StaffPad too is if you're doing like a worksheet or something, he allows you to really quickly, just with that iOS copy feature, you can just grab that music off the page, makes a screenshot basically, and then you can take it into like Pages or something.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's really fast and it works really super.
Oh, that's my favorite feature of the whole app. I got to show that off. So
yeah.
So like, let's say I need this measure right here. Double tap, and then I can 3-finger pinch. You can see that's the copy.
Grab it off the page.
Yeah, what's a good thing to paste it into?
Pages
or notes.
Hold on, let me make sure I don't have anything open. I don't want people to see. Let's go to notes here.
Been there.
All right, we'll go to okay. So like then you can just go to another app like Notes, and then you can do the opposite gesture. So it's like a 3-finger pinch in the outward direction, and then you just get this nicely formatted little score snippet. I love it. I use it all the time. It's great for like if I'm developing some Canvas content and I need to have a measure or two of something, just as an example. This is the tool that I usually write it in. I just usually have Canvas open on a Mac, or like maybe a Pages document.
That's super nice.
Yeah.
How much granularity does that give you? Does it let you like get rid of the staff label? Does it let you get rid of um, does
No,
it let you
no,
control the margins?
no, none of, to my knowledge, no. I mean,
Um,
I've never tried, but that's the thing and this is kind of like my thesis when it comes to staff pad is it's like really gets there's not a ton of control, but the defaults work really well for how I would want to use a tool like this.
Yeah, just getting something like that onto the clipboard is super nice. I still miss that with Sibelius compared. Dorico's got the graphic slices feature, which is it's a very capable feature, but it's not quite as my workflow. And but if there's not something like settings, at least get rid of the staff label. I'm not sure.
Oh, and
Uh,
you can crop it, especially if you bring it into
Yeah,
pages. Yeah, because I just tried selecting like measure 2 and 3, and it actually put in the time signature, the key signature, the clefs, and the staff labels, both, all of that stuff. So you'd have to bring it into pages and then crop that one picture.
okay.
I think it's the fastest. We're talking about iPad, and we're talking about some of the integrations in the iOS systems and using pencils and touch and all that, the split screen and stuff. This is one of those apps that uses a really intuitive gesture. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you figure it out, it's really intuitive and it's super useful.
yeah, so like this is an
Yeah,
example. Like right here, I can tell how I could have done this, written this triplet neater, but there are times where I can't tell how I could have written it any neater, and then there's times where I write it kind of sloppy, and then it works. Um, Sometimes I feel like the answer is to really think about how I'm writing everything a lot, and then sometimes I feel like I get better results if I actually think less about the results I get. Um, it's but the bottom line though is that like having a quick way to change it and mess with it with the computer keyboard would be great. It would be much welcome. I would be happy. I'm just not.
Sometimes editing that or inputting your notation, like you're doing stacked chords there, sometimes it's easier just to put in one note of that and then go back and then add the second note.
Yeah, so that worked, and I was a little
Yep.
neater that time, a lot neater actually. Let's okay. So you would say like if I'm doing that kind of thing, you would maybe think about doing it separate. That's valid. That is advice that I received from the developers was that I should think about drawing things in phases. So like getting it
Yep.
like that. But then how do you add? So here's a question that I have: is how would you add a third above this? Would you
So
just
just above it, I would put it underneath, honestly, and then drag it up, which is, and again, we're back to having to do 2 or 3 steps. And if you had a computer or a MIDI keyboard, you could just do it in one.
okay? I had a crash. Hold on. Let me try that again
Nice.
because um, by the way, anyone who's watching this should know that I am running the beta of iOS 15, so this is not StaffPad's fault if anything crashes. Um, it's my fault. So what I would want it to be is like I just draw the note and then kind of add it there. Oh, it doesn't like that right now. Okay.
I'm wondering, Robbie, if you just draw the note head, don't even try to draw the stem.
Okay.
Oh, now I didn't even recognize it. There you go.
Oh, okay. That's nice. That worked really well, actually.
And it recognizes fairly well. Like if you wanted those to be C's, that's a fourth. If you get the note a little bit closer, then it works better sometimes. But it'll pick up a lot of times, even where those ledger lines are supposed to be, even if you don't add a ledger line in your handwriting.
How are your dynamics, Paul, when you use dynamics? I don't have a ton of luck
Oh
with them.
gosh, you know what? Somebody, I don't remember if it was staff pad people or somebody else, but they showed the specific way that staff pad's looking for you to input those dynamics. And what I would do, Robbie, at this point is I would just long press with the finger and input text.
Yep.
So put your
Off the
No,
staff.
you tap down, yep, off in the middle there. So insert your text, insert your piano and your forte.
Yep,
And then put it in the wrong spot.
it did.
Tap a little bit closer to that top staff.
Yeah. Let's see. How do you make it not an active?
Tap someplace else. Oh, you know, the problem with that bottom part is it thinks that you have something there.
I forget. Can I do like the thing where I can use these?
I don't think so. I think that's Dorico.
Yeah.
I don't think any other app does that besides Dorico, which is really a boon.
David's in the
for
waiting room,
Dorico.
by the way.
Oh, is he trying to get in to the Zoom?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, just talking about speed of notation, though. I think you're absolutely hitting it on the head with the time it takes, just because there's not that extra level of precise input, and that it's all this interpreted input, is a big deal.
Yep. If they would allow us to edit both arrows or the computer keyboard or a MIDI keyboard, it would fix things without me making myself want to throw the iPad across the room sometimes.
Well, and especially because for us, so much of the time it can't be the final stop for the music, because you're gonna move it to probably Music XML and put into another application that has those abilities for page layout. I don't know. I still haven't been able to justify a place for it in my workflow. I think the handwriting stuff is obviously really cool. It's really neat, but right now I'm not showing a lot of examples through projection or for airplaying to students like this. So until I am, or even when I am, I have not yet justified StaffPad for myself.
Yeah, where StaffPad is a justification is if you're really looking for amazing playback quality, and really being able to tweak some of that automation with the volumes and such. Or like I've got, if you've got a small group of like 5-10 people and you're doing arranging and it's kind of a living document and they all have iPads and you can use StaffPad on your end and they can use StaffPad Reader on their end, really cool. But again, how many of us are in that boat?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I just arrived.
Hi, David.
I think that's like one of the coolest things. Paul, you just hit the two biggest things that StaffPad has going for it are the audio playback and the cool connectivity with all the other apps. If you've never tried it, it does a really amazing thing where you can like synchronize the like playback from all of the different instances, which is amazing if you're recording to a track. I would love to just have something that just does that for like a click track, where I can have a whole bunch of people in an ensemble just load an app on their phone that synchronizes a click that goes through all of these different tempo changes and meter changes and everything that they need to have. I've never found anything that does that, but it's super wild. And I saw somebody said my mic is low. It's because I had it muted when I came on, and Zoom is like trying to adjust and failing miserably. But yeah, if there was something like StaffPad Reader in anything else, it would be a no-brainer to get everybody to download free Dorico or free Sibelius and use that. Like, that would be amazing.
Well, and StaffPad will do the click track for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And it can have, well, so what's cool, like there are lots of apps that can try to synchronize a metronome click, but with the StaffPad thing, it can synchronize it with tempo changes and meter changes, which is the thing that nothing else can do that I'm aware of. And yeah, that, like just something like that people could have on their phones, even if they're not reading on tablets, because most of my students aren't reading on tablets. A couple of them are, but most of them aren't. I would love to have something like that. And the downside is, you were saying earlier, if it doesn't recognize your handwriting, you're kind of out of luck, and there's no fallback, and also it doesn't look great. Like I wouldn't be super proud to send somebody a PDF of something that I made in StaffPad. So I don't know. It does do a lot of really great things, and there's certainly no faster, easier way to get really good audio.
Yeah, you were talking earlier, David, before you came on about Notion. I think Notion and SnapPad are kind of in the same boat. That print button.
Well, and it's got some real like fundamental problems. They both have kind of fundamental problems. Early on, until a couple of update iPad version of it, you couldn't do a keyless score, so you couldn't have a score that didn't have a key signature for your transposing elements, which is pretty annoying. I had a couple of students in my university compositions, and I was asking them or I told them, you can't have a key signature for this non-tonal piece for B flat or net. Like you can't do that. And I assumed, this is before it came out on an iPad and I could use it, he was using it on a Surface. And I just assumed that there would be a way to do that. It really wasn't. And then even now, you can't move dynamics around. Writing choir can't put the above the staff, which is just wild. It seems like that's such a good use case for something like StaffPad, where everybody's reading off the score anyway, and there's so many instances where you would want people to be like listening to an audio track and singing in a session. That seems like such a great use case that is totally blown up by the fact that you can't even manually, to say nothing of automatically, move the dynamic above the staff.
The space for apps that are doing these kinds of rehearsal synchronization features, like I know Fourscore has some kinds of abilities here, and Music is really focusing on that area. The intersection between like notation apps, like if obviously this is not the area of focus for any major notation software, but it's also a very lucrative feature to have built into the notation software. And seeing these apps that are focused on being rehearsal synchronization apps, whether that's page turns from a director's iPad or by a click track, and moving at the same time that these notation apps are getting into the space, it's exciting. And even though like I don't ever see myself in a position where I'm going to have every student on an iPad or something, it's exciting to see this work happen and it get to that point, at least for people outside of the Asian space, because it's going to happen at some point for the pro space or the professional musicians, I should say.
I think one of the things that I am realizing now, hearing you say that, is that it's a little bit like all of the people that want their notation application to also basically be a DAW and vice versa, not realizing how fundamentally at a very low level, like application development wise, how different those goals are. And it's almost as though this is another thing. A third thing is a reader app is almost so different that it needs to be a fundamentally different thing that's built from the ground up to do this, other third thing. And I wonder, because when you think about something like StaffPad Reader, it's never going to be as good a score reader as Fourscore, because that's not their primary goal. And I would love for Sibelius for iPad and Dorico read mode to have something that is as robust as Fourscore, but it's never going to happen. Even something like Encoda, which I really admire what they're doing, that reader is a pretty fundamental part of their experience, but it's still never going to be as good as Music or Fourscore. The reason you go to Encoda isn't the reader, it's the library. And I don't know, I think Dorico of all of them has the best chance of making an automated screen reader thing, because their like automatic layout stuff is so good. It's just so ridiculously good. that I think they've got the best shot of making something where you can resize stuff and change the screen orientation, and it will automatically reflow and respace things to look good. But like, I've used some of those Music XML readers, and they're mostly bad, real bad. And I can't imagine a world where I'm sending people a Music XML file of a score instead of their individual part as a PDF.
Yeah, you mentioned people who want DAW almost an entire DAW in their notation software, and it's very funny to think like a decade, 2 decades ago, we were in like the inverse space where people wanted, or Logic Pro built in these notation features that no one on earth should ever try and use into the DAW. I'm not sure what other DAWs have notation features, but it's
I mean,
it's a
I
scary
remember
world.
trying to do notation in like Cakewalk Studio or something in the 90s.
Hey, can somebody make the Files app search correctly while we're having this conversation?
Well, actually, I think that was one of the points I was making about how the Files app is buggy earlier, and how you have no recourse when it doesn't behave the way you want it to.
You would think like searching, if you have a folder called Dorico projects, searching for that exact phrase.
I think opening up the folder that you're in and searching for the only item in that folder will not surface that item in file search. If file search has problems, it's almost like Apple is not great at search.
I think it's worse right now in iOS 15 beta than.
Oh, I don't. I think I had
Really? You think it's
exactly as many problems in iOS 14.
I guess I don't use file search enough.
All right. Well,
These
as soon
always-
as I get that figured
yeah,
out, you keep
how
mentioning
things-
Dorico, so we might as well show that off. Did you
Yeah,
want?
Sorry.
we haven't talked about Sibelius or
about how things surface certain things to Spotlight on the iPad, and I just have no idea
Oh,
how
I don't
anything
either, and
surfaces
it's-
anything to Spotlight on the iPad because I only use it to find apps.
They
I've
keep
never used
they
it
also
to find
like
a file.
not only is it buggier than ever, but like they keep making it like the intended way it works is also worse with each subsequent release. Like in the current and most recent version that was not a public beta, typing the exact name of an app, and it could be like a very specific app. I'm not talking about notes, but typing in the full name of an app would not, like you would think like the app would be the first search result, right? Like if you
Right.
searched for like Fourscore or something, and if it even shows up at all, it's like I have to scroll past like emails with that word in it first, like just ridiculous stuff. Very, very ridiculous. Which is kind of.
I
Go ahead.
have not had that issue. Spotlight has actually it's inconsistent, but it's good. If that like it will some days it will surface drafts for me. Some days it will surface bare notes. Some days it won't surface those things at all. Like it'll pretend like that they're not indexed. But more often than not, well, especially it's been very consistent with me with app names. But I use it to try like. If I have no idea what app I put something in, like, is this a dev? And I normally know. But when I don't know, if like something ever got out of drafts into OmniFocus, it will usually, it's got a chance of finding those things.
Okay, so I think I found what I was looking for. So I'm in Files, and also another thing is you can tap on a Dorico project in your file library from Files, and it'll open it in Dorico, but not if it's in the cloud. For example, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to tap it. It was not downloaded from the cloud, and I'm expecting to get an error. There we go, error opening file. So usually I think typical behavior is that it downloads first and then opens. I don't know if that's a Dorico thing or an Apple thing, but I'm usually good if I hold on the file and then download it first and then tap on it. Of course, within the Dorico app, you can also, you can import a file. David, we already talked about my feelings about integrating with the native Files app and why I think every app should do it.
Have you had this experience opening something in the like little mini files app interface that you get from Dorico, where if you take too long before tapping the next thing, it will like zip you back to Dorico's app container folder?
I haven't, but that sounds like I
Okay.
mean, because that okay. So here's my question: is that method of importing and exporting, that was like the original way that the Files app worked, right? Is like you didn't get this full screen view of Files app. Instead, you kind of went into that like tiny little thing. So I assume that they're using the old Apple API for the Files integration, and that maybe Apple hasn't updated it recently. What do you think?
I think they're using the version of a file picker that they are getting from the version of Qt that they're using to build the app.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Now, I was speculating earlier, slash trying to recall what I had heard alluded to in various sources, and not remembering which one it was from. Does is there any capacity for anyone to say that Steinberg is very seriously aiming to be using the regular native files API for picking things?
I don't know for sure. I don't know, Robbie. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, when I recorded with Daniel, he said that this is something they want to look at. So my
Okay,
feeling,
that's what it was.
yeah. I mean,
I couldn't remember where the source was.
right. Yeah. No,
In,
I think
in
I think
general, I know they're trying to use the smallest amount of native platform specific code as possible so that they can have everything that they build into the app work across platforms. They understand that there are platform specific things, especially for iPad, that they need to do, but they're trying to do as little of it as possible, because every time they do, that's a thing that when they add a new feature, they have to make sure it works and possibly update it for each of those platform specific things. Like Apple Pencil, like that's one of the reasons why you can't use your pencil for anything. It's one of the reasons why you can't use your custom fonts for anything. So
I know Cubasis has been out for a long time, and they're still using their own file opener and containers and such. So
yeah, and Cubasis, if folks haven't tried Cubasis, it's really impressive for an iPad app.
super.
In a way,
And it's only like $50 or something. It's totally worth it.
Cubasis is a bit of a different story because, like, if I think about, I haven't used Cubase, but if I think about how Logic formats its project files, like that, especially with cleansing, that is open for so much going wrong. As, being container files, Dropbox regularly chokes with those. Google Drive treats them like zip files. So that makes sense to probably keep that way. Whereas Dorico files are, you can one file. You can, if you've poked with them in a text editor, they're interesting.
Oh, really? That's
they're not, yeah. I mean, it's not like you're reading just raw music XML, but it's like wow, this is a like the thought. This is not as annoying as some other things can be.
I'm surprised that it's not a binary file. You're saying it's not a binary file. You can actually open it in a text editor and make logical.
Let me make sure my memory is, I'm not just like inventing memories, because I do like dream about this stuff.
Dreaming and Score editor. I can enable screen share, by the way, if you want me to. I also did anyone else want to say anything about Dorico as we're doing our? We've sort of, David, we've covered everything except Sibelius for iPad, which I feel. Do I feel least qualified? I probably feel less qualified to talk about Notion than I do Sibelius, but I figure Dorico is something we've all used.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the only thing I would say is all of these are kind of, they're all not kind of, they're all amazing technical achievements, and especially the two that we're most recently been discussing, Dorico and Sibelius, are pretty incredible achievements for them just to bring their kind of core engine over to iPad. Having said that, I think only really one of them is useful and it's not Sibelius.
Yeah, I mean, you when you say that, you mean like kind of like from the point of like conceiving of some notes to like actually printing out the page for someone. You're sort of that.
Yeah, I think
holistic-
it's really the only one that you can start and finish a project in, and give it to somebody else and feel good about it. I mean, if somebody else has a different idea about it, I'm happy to entertain competing ideas. But
I have started and finished a percussion. I'm trying to think if I've actually ever done that with any iPad app, and Staff Pad would be the only one that I've ever gone that far with. But we're talking about like auxiliary percussion parts that I had to add to a like beginner concert band piece. So like suspended cymbal roll on a whole note, that kind of stuff. Cowbell playing quarter notes, like, and that looked pretty good. I was pretty pleased at how easy I was able to get that out. We talked about this earlier too. I think that like the easier the type of rhythms you're trying to input, the more the handwritten experiences are fast and feel really, really good to use. I
also think
the
speed goes way up if you're only looking at a one line instrument. If you're looking at piano and you're doing chords and stuff, that really slows down with handwriting.
Yeah. I have, in the week and a half Dorico for iPad has been out of beta, because I am, I think, the only one of us four who didn't get the beta. I've done 2 projects that I've given off to students, and I could have finished them in Dorico for iPad, because I'm just more comfortable doing more of my work on a Mac. I did most of them on the iPad, and then I moved the project files over to the Mac to, just like quick copy, basically copy the player, copy all the music, adjust it up a couple octaves for a second person to give them the same thing, and play with features I actually don't even know if they're in the Dorico for iPad app. I would suspect they probably are, but I was more comfortable trying to do that work on the Mac in the first place. I haven't actually sat through the tutorials, so it's probably faster than I'm making it out to be to like select a bunch of stuff in Dorico for iPad, but it seems to select stuff. Because I don't also have a trackpad, it seems to be a little bit slower to select stuff. Also, because I'm running beta software on my iPad, it's more prone to crash, and I didn't want to do that in the last couple steps. But you definitely can finish projects in Dorico for iPad in a way that I'm not sure other apps are quite as ready to. Like the PDF that you would print from or being able to print it yourself, finish. I'm still more comfortable finishing those things on the Mac and sending the Dorico file off, but it makes a huge difference. You're sending the Dorico file off and not Music XML to like have to then deal with Music XML import and cleaning some things up from that. Like what you get is the same thing that you were just the exact same thing that you were just dealing with. And in fact, you could, if you knew that you were going to like be doing most of the work on the iPad and you started the project on the Mac, you could do most of that, so-called finishing work, like the engraving options. You could start, if you started the project on the Mac and set up the things in engrave mode that are just a bit slower in Dorico for iPad, you could actually finish a lot more on Dorico for iPad. I feel at the level that I normally want to.
Yeah, I think so too. And having basically all of the features outside of engrave mode available to you makes it a lot easier to do the same kinds of things. Like the limitations of the Dorico for iPad app are more, I don't know, kind of superficial, if that makes sense. And the limitations of Sibelius for iPad are much more fundamental and seemingly much more arbitrary, which is frustrating.
I have not played with Sibelius for iPad. My only point of reference is the scoring notes episode from last week on it. I and Philip's review of it on Scoring Notes, but it seems I get what you're saying with arbitrary. It seems more like ran out of time things if I'm trying to like attribute the reason, or like we want to ship and like we're not the 1.0 first. And I think in fairness, Dorico has its share. They're not limitations, I think, in the same way. But Dorico definitely has some of its own, like, oh, this is a 1.0, like, this is great, artistship or whatever the phrase is.
What have you guys used Dorico on desktop before it came out on iPad? Because I did not.
Oh, I did.
Oh,
Definitely.
that's my main one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live in Dorico for it. It is. I use it way more than Logic Pro. It's in my dock.
Yeah, it was my main one too.
So that's my main thing. I've been using it since it was in the first version was released, and since actually that was in beta, and I've had Sibelius since 1998, I think, and so but I did all of my work in Sibelius until just the last couple of years of Dorico, but most of my stuff is in Dorico now.
Yeah, Dorico is that was the most exciting thing about it coming to iPad for me, was that I could basically take the serious work that I could only do on my Mac up until that point, because I had looked at StaffPad, and ultimately the fact that I would have just been pushing music XML files from it into onto my desktop, and I haven't had even a Pro iPad for that long, only about a year. But that is the number one appeal of Dorico to the iPad, that it is the tool I am using on my desktop. Everything else is secondary. I mean, it could be a way worse tool than it is, and I would still be very hyped about it, still using it, as it would have won the iPad notation war for me, because it's about what I'm using on my more than anything else. But it's a fantastic tool.
Well, and then on the iPad, like, it's basically exactly the same as using it on my 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I jump into write mode. I've got my smart keyboard, and I just go. It is identical to using it on my Mac in terms of the flow of writing, and it is so fast. I haven't. The last time I was doing any kind of demonstrations for kids, projecting my notation in software in a class, what I was doing, I was using my Mac, airplaying it to an Apple TV when I was directing a choir, and I would pull open a solfege example, and I would project it onto my whiteboard, and I would have kids write in the solfege syllables in marker, and then after the last kid finished, I would have them have one kid quick run up and erase it, assuming they were correct, and I would paste the solfege syllables as lyrics onto Dorico, and I could do the exact same thing on so that it was more legible that way. I could do the exact same thing with an iPad today, because it's the exact same Dorico, fundamentally. I'm not doing that anymore, but because that's not part of my job anymore. But it was very nice to do in Dorico, because it would naturally redraw things in such a fantastic way to fit those solfege syllables. Now, obviously,
Okay, I've lost everyone again because I have. I guess I'm not. My account. Something's up with my Zoom account. So we're gonna have all of them come back in. Here comes the team here. All right. Well, I seriously did not think we would go this long, but here we are. You want to back up and say that sentence again?
Yeah, I could have adhered all of that to. I could have adhered to all the music notation to the kids' syllables after adding their original like handwritten in syllables. Had I, wanted to screw around with a bunch of horizontal spacing or note spacing features, but like I'm in the middle of teaching a class and there was no practical benefit, so I just had the kids erase real fast so I could write in more legibly. But that's the only reason that was even necessary. Dorco is capable of that, but.
Yeah, David, you missed earlier when we all got booted out. I guess I owe Zoom money. Rather than fixing it, I just relaunched it last time I lost everyone and said, we won't go over another 45 minutes, will we? And then here we are.
Well, yeah, it took another 30 minutes to even talk about the 2 apps that launched in the last 2 weeks.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Sibelius. So, I mean, I would consider myself to I've put in some time with it, but it's like very playful, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not trying to really make anything very serious in it, and that's mostly just because I'm not currently a subscriber, so some of the features are locked for me, but I think that I've gotten a really pretty good idea for how they've kind of designed it, even just through some play. I know, David, you've used it a bit. I'll just say, like, if there was coming back to what you said earlier, like if Dorico is a very, very faithful adaptation of the desktop version, I would say that that with that comes the strengths of the desktop version. Maybe there are some like iPad specific features that I want from it, which I mentioned way earlier at the beginning of the stream. Things like split view, maybe an Apple Pencil strategy, the native file integration, which we talked about. Those who noticed when I opened this Sibelius file, this app did open directly to the native Apple Files app. It allowed me to see all my recently opened Sibelius projects. Which is cool, and it does have split view. So, just to kind of be fair to all of these apps and highlight the same things, Sibelius does have some of these iPad isms that I really, really do like. Does have Apple Pencil support. I think we've kind of talked about the strengths of Dorico, why like having this power of this desktop version allows you to be, to be super fast, efficient, to get something that looks really sharp that you would feel confident handing to a musician to read off of. So I guess for me, it's like easy to think about. I mean, Sibelius to me is similar on iPad. Like some of the things that I don't like about it are things I don't like about the desktop version. But some of the things I do like about it are things that are iPad specific. Like I don't know. What do you think about this? Like for you, David, did you do a lot of the pencil input? I think that this method of dragging the rhythm up and down to get the note where you want is pretty. For me, I'm slow at it, but it's nice. I feel like I'm precise and I have control in a way that I don't feel like I
find
have.
It fiddly, especially when it comes to so try to enter an accidental note and then lift up your pencil without moving the note head up or down. So like if I wanted to, I was just doing this and spelling out chords with accidentals in them, and I find it really difficult to when I get to the point of having tilted my pencil to get the sharp to come up and then need to lift my pencil straight up without moving the note head up or down is really tricky.
So you're talking about pencil mode, which I actually learned about later after the fact. That's a mode you can trigger into where basically the tilting of the pencil determines if it's makes it sharp or flat.
You can do it with the same way you're doing it now.
For me, it's a drag though. So when I do this, I'm dragging from the 16th note up, and then I don't actually tilt. I just keep dragging right.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Sorry, I was looking at your screen capture and not your camera. Yeah. I'm talking about entering notes on the staff by tapping with the pencil in the staff.
Right. Okay, so like
and
this.
So there, and so from there, if you tilt the pencil up.
Yeah, so like if I tilt the pencil.
Left and right is duration, and up and down is chromatic inflection.
So as you can see, as I tilt the pencil right, I have a dot on the note, and then if I tilt it left, it turns into now it's a 16th note, now a 32nd note, and then I can drag the pencil.
So like try to write a C sharp.
And then if I drag it up this way, so I mean, I wonder if the way to do it is to almost, this is obviously like not the most comfortable thing, but I admire the spirit of it. Hold on.
So I kind of like the gestural thing on the number pad a lot more.
Here we go. Okay, hold on. I've got a 16th note, which is what I want. And now I want to make it into
and see-
Oh, hold on, I lost it. Okay. I want to make it a sharp. So do I drag my pencil angle up?
tilt it up. Yeah.
I'm not getting. Oh, there's a sharp. Hold on. There we go. Okay. But now, there we go. Oop. Yeah, you're right. So the lift is tricky.
It's very challenging.
But the number
it's
pad
like-
thing, I like. This thing,
I think the number pad thing is quite clever. Philip didn't like it, but I think it's quite clever.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's one of their better ideas.
How functional is it then without any Apple Pencil though? Because that's
so the thing that Robbie's doing right now on the number pad. You can do it with your finger.
okay. Is it good?
It works exactly
to
the
do
same
with your
way.
finger. Okay.
Yeah, it feels totally reasonable, natural. So you touch on the number pad to get the duration that you want, and you can slide it to the right to make it sharp or to the left to make it flat. And then when you release, it puts the note in on the staff. And it's just wherever you touch down first is the duration that you get.
So and then there's like a
Yeah,
number pad
I just
system.
looking at that, I wasn't sure if those would be too small at touch targets.
You've got I'm sorry.
No, they're totally reasonable. It's to start the gesture. And that's
Okay.
the thing that matters. Now, what I don't know is how much room you have to go left and right if you're on the side. And you can use those two methods in combination. Like right now, I have, because I'm right-handed, I have my Apple Pencil right hand, and I've moved the number pad to the left, which is another cool thing that you can't do on a hard keyboard attached to the right side. But so you can use them both, and you can use the Apple Pencil on the staff in combination with the number pad. And I would probably do that instead of trying to do the weird tilt thing.
So yeah, for me
How'd you move the number pad?
So I
So
like
if you collapse it to the where you just get the purple eighth note,
Yeah,
and then tap and hold.
gotcha.
So I like that a lot. This kind of combination of like I do like using the computer keyboard here, which is great. Obviously, there's like trackpad input works, and then yeah, and sort of a combination of like I can imagine myself. I mean, this is low enough on the screen that it doesn't feel weird to do the dragging gesture like I'm showing now, while the iPad is docked to a keyboard, which is pretty nice. So that's pretty good. Now here's the other thing,
Okay,
and,
so
and I like this.
measure 10 here is exactly what I like about Dorico, is it won't let you do nonsense like that.
Yeah.
So I guess people will have different opinions about this. I personally like that almost all of the stuff is buried under this. What is the word for this, David?
Command search.
Command search. Thank you. I just like being able to basically. Oops, I was hoping that would select, and it doesn't.
So the problem with
I'm
command
mixing
search
up-
is you have to know exactly what the command is called. And if you
That is
don't,
true.
you're screwed.
That is tricky. But being able to search, but this is a method of searching where it works well for my brain. I do like the idea that it's all in the same place. Needing to be super specific about your search term is definitely, I get that that's frustrating. But having it all here, I mean, just being able to, like one thing, like, okay, so here's an example of, selecting some things, and then like, do you know if there's a keyboard shortcut for it? I don't think there is
For what?
for the command search.
I don't know. I don't have a keyboard attached to my iPad right now.
But that's a kind of thing that I do quite a lot.
I have my Magic Keyboard that I use with my iPad in my backpack over here.
Oh, that's super convenient to have it all the way over there.
I never use it.
Because it's all the way over there. That's the whole.
Let's see.
Because it's not the difference of having it attached.
Yeah, but now I have my iPad flat on a table so that I can write on it.
What's the word for is do I not search hairpin to get one? What would be the search term?
I don't know. This is the problem. You could search hairpin. You could try searching crescendo.
Crescendo.
See, I would have searched hairpin. I would have thought crescendo would have given me a CRESC line. That's
part of that is from the amount of Dorco you're using. I think that's not their fortissimo. Do you have to hold command? Yeah, there. I think. Do you have to hold command when you're putting?
You do on the desktop. I don't know how it works if you don't have a keyboard attached.
This just worked. I just typed letter F. I went in.
So you need to hold down command while you type letter F to get the correct dynamic font.
Oh, is that?
So can you double tap in there and delete
hold on.
delete those Fs.
Hold the command key.
Yeah.
That does not.
That's
work.
how it would be
That's
on.
what you do on the desktop.
Yeah. You hit the MF at the bottom. You hit the MF at the bottom of your screen.
That's.
I
I
think Philip covered that.
I forget it's a separate floaty thing,
Okay.
and that's the way that displays
weird.
is new in iOS 15.
Yeah. They might have some revision of that to do
it'd be nice if that
when
was,
iOS 15 comes out.
If I would like to be able to do that from the keyboard personally.
Well, yeah.
Rather,
Especially
without
since
taking
that's
my
how you
fingers
do it
off
on the
them, I
on the
understand
desktop.
that Apple believes that this little strip on the bottom here is part of the keyboard. I do not.
So have either of you guys really put the keyboard shortcuts through their paces? I am
Not
very
in Sibelius.
okay. Yeah, I have in Dorco, but I haven't even finished the quick tutorial of Sibelius not yet. That like the 6 screens it gives you before you're allowed to start. But I know Philip said that it uses the keyboard shortcuts from the laptop keyboard shortcut set on desktop Sibelius, and I am incredibly critical of those keyboard shortcuts as being anywhere close to usable.
Number row for the
Yeah,
Really?
I think using the number row as input for the keypad worked, but the way just the defaults in Sibelius with that keyboard shortcut set it's missing a ton of actions. There are things on the keypad that aren't there. I have a blog post actually really tearing into it and explaining sharing my own set of keyboard shortcuts because I don't think it's usable with the stock. That's why it took me very long to move from Finale to Sibelius just because the default keyboard shortcuts without a numpad were not usable.
When I started using computers that didn't have number pads, I had to go buy a separate hardware number pad.
I spent a lot of time revising the keyboard shortcuts until I actually found something that I think is faster than using a number pad with Sibelius. Because you don't have to move your hands at all. It's totally usable with what I came up with was totally usable on a MacBook Pro keyboard without any additional peripherals, and that turned Sibelius from something that was unusable to me unless I was trying to use a numpad to something I was incredibly fast with. And Dorco does not need that kind of revision, and Finale did not either.
So there is this is not 100% what you're talking about, but like the numbers do work 1 through I guess about 9 to 0 actually, and then were you earlier referring to the option, holding the option key down and then doing like Z up through Q, basically like this, what I'm showing on the screen here, to change, because this is how I learned to do it without a number pad. Is I remember like writing marching band pit charts on my first ever MacBook, holding the option key down and like getting used to all these little shortcuts, and they're not fun, they don't feel good, but they're
I did not try to do that at all. What I did was I'm trying to even remember how all the problems are with the defaults. I think like the minus and the equal button on the main row are not bound or something. Or rather, they're not bound to things on the tie. You have to subscribe for ties. Okay.
No, tier
I-
limitation hit.
Oh, tier. Okay, I thought that um, yeah, I think they like changed the trackpad or something, and so you're missing, like, if you look at the top right the top three rightmost icons on the main numpad, the things on the right side of it, the and the red, or no, yeah, it's just the things on the top of it and the right side of it. You're not really getting bound unless you're using that awful like alt thing, but that was all another for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were some other things I found, and I had to do because you lose by just virtue of having the number row on the top of your keyboard be the numpad. You lose some of the interval features
Right.
that don't wind up bound to anything at all in those shortcut sets. I came up with another set of modifier keys to fill in the gaps there. It worked out. It was, with a lot of customization, it was very fast, but it took a lot of customization to get to that point. And does Sibelius? I know Dorico for iPad lets you actually rebind any keyboard shortcuts. Does Sibelius let you rebind any of those?
I am not sure.
I'm not actually sure about that
I
either.
don't think so.
David, you're soft again, by the way.
Sorry, I got too far away. I don't think so, and I guess I don't know why I'm so soft. Yeah, I don't think you can change any of those settings.
I'm pretty sure I tapped around every possible menu and didn't find anything of the sort.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you do get the old create menu, which is a little bit of nostalgia for old school Sibelius users. Apparently, that's what they even call that plus sign. Philip had to tell me that. Yeah, I don't think there's any way to customize any of that stuff. I was going to say something about the number pad earlier when Ayler was talking about it. I lost it. But yeah, I've pulled out my keyboard, and some of the keyboard shortcuts work, but a lot of the ones that you get when you're in text editing mode are not available. So the thing that we were trying to get Robbie to do earlier was not working. One thing that I really dislike about this is apparently they have built in several common music and text fonts into the application, so that if you open a file that has another font in it, it will render correctly, but you can't choose the other font. So
Like Norfolk?
So they have built Norfolk into the application, so that if you open a Norfolk font project in Sibelius for iPad, it will render correctly, but you can't choose it if you start a new project in Sibelius for iPad, which is dumb because Helsinki, which is the default, is hideous. If you look at one of the, like, make a quarter rest and zoom in on it, like, you're gonna, it's dangerous. It's gonna hurt somebody.
That's a super frustrating behavior that they're all built in and accessible to change to. That's ridiculous.
The Helsinki quarter rest is like super pokey up. It's like super pointy. It's very dangerous. I don't think we should let children handle them without adult supervision.
So I think the thoughts really on the biggest strength of the Sibelius for iPad app that it possesses is that it's able to work with native Sibelius files, which, when we were talking about Dorico and being able to work in Dorico files, and not just start stuff in Music XML that you're then gonna or start something that you're going to have to put into Music XML before you can send it to your computer to finish, like, getting something you can print for a child or a student. Is a valuable thing, but with the keyboard shortcuts as it sounds like they are, I can't imagine I could be anywhere close to fast on Sibelius for iPad compared to like what you could do on Sibelius for Mac, which is a shame. And whereas on Dorico, I think I'm almost exactly as fast as I am on the Mac because it's the same keyboard shortcuts, and just even if you're not very proficient with those shortcuts, Dorico for iPad has MIDI keyboard support, which I don't believe Sibelius for iPad does, which I know is the other main way that people are interacting with these on the desktop. And I have a lot of applause. I forced myself to write out a multi-voice piano part with only using the touch controls, without letting myself use the keyboard at all, just to see how that works. And it's good, very good for a 1.0. The design decisions they've made for how touch input works on Dorico, I think, make a lot of sense. I didn't play with any of the tablature or the drum pad features, but with that piano keyboard entry, I know some people had some complaints about how fiddly the zoom is or isn't with it, but I think it's a really good way to manage touch only input if you have to do that. But touch only input is always going to be slower than using a hardware keyboard, and Dorico just for iPad flies with the hardware keyboard because it's the same input as Dorico on your Mac. With the hardware keyboard, which is already very fast.
I've got an unrelated question. As I'm just like fiddling around here, showing off stuff as you all are having some discussion. One of the things I really do like miss from my hardcore Sibelius days is the keyboard shortcut for adding like a third or a fourth
interval.
higher.
Yeah.
What's the best way to recreate that in Dorico without using a popover?
Well, you have to use popover.
Yeah, I Shift I plus
popover.
3 is the fastest way for me. I have no issue doing that with the interval popover. I don't think that's means the one thing you can do.
Wait, what was that? Shift I plus-
if you're in chord mode, you can just type in the letter. But to just like put in a bunch of stuff by a third, the way to do that is the interval popover.
And there's a big difference if you do the same thing in Dorico that you would want to do in Sibelius. If you want to add like a triad above a note in Sibelius, you just hit 3 twice. In Dorico, it's always measuring the interval from the bass, and so you have to add a third and a fifth instead of adding a third and then another third. You can also, one cool thing about the way Dorico works is in that same popover, that's the same popover you would use to transpose a section. So if you put T in front of it, it will transpose by that much.
Okay.
I didn't know this. I always use
on,
the transpose
David.
dialogue.
David, pause.
I learned this because I was trying to figure out, because I was going crazy. I'm like, how can I, like, I really, a lot of times just need to transpose a passage up a minor third, and it's really tedious, and I would like to, like, I was trying to make a macro, but macros don't have access to the things in dialogues, and so Lily said there's no way to do that, but you can't access dialogue stuff in a macro, but what you can do is use the intervals dialogue or the intervals popover. And so, yeah. So here, Robbie, if you type T capital M 3, it will transpose it up a major third.
Nice.
That's awesome. What I've normally resulted to doing if I didn't want to go into the interval popover, or without going into the transpose dialogue because I didn't know that was a feature, would be to change the key signature to the new thing, then hold the whole selection all option up to by 2, and then maybe delete the key signature or maybe revert the key signature back, which
so what I
gets
really
it done.
Yeah, what I really like about the interval popover is that you can. So the thing that Robbie just typed with capital M3 did a chromatic transposition, but you can also just type 3 with no modifier, and it will be a diatonic transposition. And if you want a minor third, you type a lowercase m. If you want to whatever. You
So
type
can we
whatever
come
you
back
want.
to adding a third? Because I was struggling
So
when that was happening.
just do exactly what you just did, and don't
Without the
put
T.
a T.
Right, I know that
If you
one.
just
Yeah,
type
or
3.
no M. Yeah.
I know that one, but to me it's like I do enough of it that I would like less steps. So I'm wondering.
So if you want to do a third and a fifth, type 3, 5.
Still, yeah, I know. It's the break of the brain process that is the problem, not how much actual time it takes to do it. So
See,
like,
I'm actually the opposite. I think that putting it into this popover for me has made the process feel less frictionful than I want to do it more this way. Like I'm acting on these notes with in the same ways I act on other things with popovers, by rather than like a button that's dedicated to one kind of an interval. That maps better for my brain in terms of how I want to use the software.
What
I do appreciate that Sibelius is a single keystroke to do that.
Yes,
like that's cool.
That's kind of where I'm coming
Sibelius
from.
for iPad changes it to be Shift 3 instead of just 3, which has broken my brain a little bit. But yeah,
I was actually wondering if I had misremembered it, but I'm glad to hear you say that it is actually just a number on the Mac.
No, because 3 is now 3 on the keypad.
Yes, correct. Right. So here's a question: is there nothing in all of the keyboard shortcuts of Dorico that would allow me to like find the option of adding a third above high? Like if I type in third,
I don't think that's.
It would probably be under no input if it was in there, but gosh, I love the Dorico
on
filters.
The desktop, you can record a macro that enters stuff as a popover. So
Okay.
like you can, but you can't do macros like that on iPad.
Can you set a macro to a keyboard command?
You can create, so you can create a macro and then you can have a keyboard command fire that macro, I think.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I forget if you have to do it through the Mac keyboard thing or if you can do that in Dorico somehow. And you might have to do some fiddling with the macro to like save it separately from just the user macro.
Yeah.
But it's doable.
It's fiddly. I think that's the thing that I would expect that to improve in Dorico 4.
Yeah, some more automation features would be nice, but like I said, I'm doing a lot less interval additions or a lot fewer interval additions than you guys are in regular like notation software workflow. But I don't find the current flow to be anything less than delightful.
I really like it for very fast chromatic transpositions because I do that a lot. Like I want to hear this thing and then a measure later I want to hear the exact same thing up a major second chromatically, like chromatic transposition, everything up a major second. And that's a little bit tedious to do in Sibelius because the only way to do it so that it's a chromatic transposition and not a diatonic transposition is to go into the transpose dialogue.
I think we're about to have a baby sighting.
Yeah, that's a huge power. I didn't know.
It's right here. No.
I know that it had some of those powers for chromatic transposition instead of diatonic. Definitely the transpose in the interval popover. That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
That makes me even happier. Because almost always when I'm doing interval additions, I'm doing it over a selection of music. So I'm like taking that step back anyway to select the notes I want to make that addition to, and at that point, working on a popover is no more or less removed than selecting them in the first place was.
Right.
I guess you probably can't comment on that thing that is that Steinberg hinted at on their official Facebook that there's a big update coming tomorrow to Dorico for iPad, and I wonder what it could be. But the outside of that update, that might resolve that might make one thing that is currently a limitation in it much nicer. I would like to. I still. And maybe they would not be in a position to do this until they have made other adjustments to engrave mode in Big Dorico, as they like to call it, which is hilarious and adorable.
It's adorable. It's my favorite thing that I learned in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Dorico for Windows and Mac was their Big Dorico, but maybe there are more engrave mode improvements to come before they would be in a position to bring more of engrave mode to mobile. But I would happily pay $80 a year or maybe even more to have just to have frames and half engrave options on mobile you know.
Yeah, I mean, even if I could just, like you said, so part of me would be happy just being able to adjust the frames that are already there. But,
Yeah, that would
yeah.
make a difference.
Yeah,
Because
even
I
if it was
often
only
want
frame overrides and not master pages, though I don't know if it would make sense to do one without the other.
Yeah, I think frames are so baked into the way master pages work, and it would get really arduous really fast to be making frame edits on every part. But yeah, there's some frame edits like I wish I had baked into my default template. Like I very frequently want the music frame going into the copyright text frame. It's like something I change
Right.
on almost every single score.
Right.
And speaking of, maybe things they're waiting until they're finished baking on Dorco iPad. Maybe the God, I hope there is one day coming the template support that I yearn for. But maybe they're waiting until they have something more in that realm before they move on, before they start trying to mess with the flow of files too much on Dorco for iPad.
Right.
So
Right.
I got distracted by the octaves Robbie's using in these scales and trying to think about it.
It's all good. I gotta bounce everyone.
Taylor-
So do we have
All right.
conclusions? Y'all can keep going in the Discord. I gotta stop the Zoom.
Sure.
I'm also Zoom is reminding me for the third time that I owe them money anyway too. So which means we've been going for 2 hours and 15 minutes almost.
All right. Well, this was
Hey,
fun. Thank you.
Can I ask you all you masters of Dorico, how do I change all my rehearsal marks in one fell swoop from ABCs to bar numbers?
I think that'll be in your engraving options.
Might be a layout option.
It's one or the other, and you can
Let me check.
You mean
We can
permanently across
figure it out
all
on,
of your
on
scores?
Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just across one score. I just don't want to do them one at a time.
Yeah, you can do it.
I'm
so
open.
my screen is my picture of my overhead is hiding the place where you would go. But you see the options at the bottom.
Yep.
You can do it from here.
Are you in engraved mode or white right mode?
Well, no, I'm in write mode. So you can.
It would be in both.
But I would change it from either either the layout or the notation options would more permanently make that change across all of your scores.
And that's why I'm afraid I'm afraid it's going to be an engraving option, which you don't have.
It is.
Yeah.
It's engraved, not layout. I keep hoping things are like I on the Mac I pay so little attention to which it is,
Right.
and now it matters to me. It's like I've never once thought about the limitations of non-pro Dorico versions until 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So it sounds like you can't change it on the iPad because it is one of the many parts of engrave mode that are not implemented on the iPad.
But can
You
you
All
can
right.
do it manually, but
Yep.
can you
Somebody
still
wants
not
that.
change it from the bottom area though?
you can probably change it on a one-off in the properties
Yeah.
in the what they are now calling lower zone.
So just open. They're calling it the lower zone.
That's where we're
now
doing
on
it one at
iPad.
a time down there.
Yeah. Okay, that's where I do it usually. But yeah, there is that's interesting to know that it's a desktop only permanent change across all scores.
Yeah, there are a
Right.
couple of engraved mode defaults that, like I changed in the first week of using Dorico,
Right.
that I now really, really miss being able to adjust on Dorico for iPad. And though, like the fact that if any bars at the end of a part will say tacit al fine instead of bars of rest will just say tacit al fine instead of giving you
That's
the
such a
number.
weird default.
It is, and again, I didn't even care that it didn't even occur to me that it was the default because I changed it. I saved it as a default in like the first day I was using Dorico. I changed a lot of things as defaults that maybe I wish I could revisit, but I don't know what they were. But the I haven't heard anything about whether like they might bring some of the things that I would consider essential engrave options, like for just to what kind of rehearsal marks you have. I can hope. My personal dream is that when it comes time to buy Dorico 4, I can pay a bit of extra money and get some more pro features. But Steinberg has not suggested anything to that extent. They haven't even started talking about Dorico 4
Tomorrow's
publicly.
episode of Scoring Notes.
Well, I was gonna do that anyway, but yeah, it sounds like I really should. That's very exciting. Do you guys have Daniel on tomorrow?
Yeah.
Good. Does he say anything about that in definitively? Because he was
He's
alluding to it a
the
little bit.
possibility of adding more pro features and possibly for another pro level of subscription to the iPad app if the current one does well, right? Like,
Well, that's great
they
because
didn't
I
wanna
have gone on their
invest-
forums to say that I would do that. I would pay for that.
And so would I. I would happily pay more for that. And they just didn't want to invest that amount of time and developer effort into it if they didn't think it was going to pay off.
Yeah, I would easily pay at somewhere around the ballpark of $80 a year for more of the pro features I'm missing.
I was just going to say I would definitely pay double.
Yeah, without even thinking about it.
All right,
So,
I hate to shut this down, but
No, that's cool.
I guess I'll shamelessly plug. If you're one of the 2 people that Restream tells me are watching this right now, or
One of them is me, actually.
Okay, nice.
Just so I could see the chat.
There was a maximum of at one point like maybe 5, but if you're for any reason watching this, I'm going to take this down and I'll put it in the Patreon area for people who want to rewatch it. But yeah, I mean if you're liking this kind of discussion, we do have a channel on my Music Ed Tech Talk Discord server where we talk about notation software all the time, and Patreon supporters of Music Ed Tech Talk. Vendor plug, yes.
About notation software about half of the time.
All right, I'm gonna kill the stream here. I will be chatting with you all throughout the rest of the day. Should I put on some outro music?
Sure.
Do you guys actually want to continue this station on Cloud?
I've got to bounce.
Got to balance too.
Okay.
I would love to
I
continue the
should do
conversation,
laundry.
but I can't right now.
Yeah, I could go do laundry instead of talking about Dorico, but
it will not be the last.
You can
do
That
it.
is
Been
for
fun
sure.
though.
All right. This
All
is
right,
fun.
everyone,
Everyone.
take care, and I'll talk to you throughout the day and later. See ya.
yeah.